Thank you. Great. So the KQ is a partnership of 105 academic, cultural research, scientific and media organizations located in a 1 mile radius around King's Cross. Together, our partners represent a concentration of knowledge and expertise to rival any in the world. Our partners include UCL, the British Museum, University of the Arts, London, Google, Wellcome, RADA, King's Place, and the Francis Crick Institute, as well as local community organizations such as the Somerstown Community Association. One of our proud partners is the University of London, and we're so pleased we can partner with them to bring you today's event. Senate House Library is celebrating the 150th anniversary of its founding collections this year with an online gallery of 150 unique and treasured items, charting the growth of the library in becoming one of the UK's largest academic libraries for arts, humanities, and social sciences. The online gallery celebrating the 150th anniversary officially launched on Friday, the 18th of June this year, exactly 150 years to the day from when the first major collections were given to the library. I'd like to introduce Rebecca Simpson, who's the Communications and Engagement Officer at Senate House Library. I think you've got a modified title, Rebecca, so I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Bev. Yes, I'm Head of Engagement for Senate House Library now.
There we go. So yeah, thanks so much, Rebecca. Just to say to everyone, the virtual tour will last about 30 minutes and there'll be Q&A at the end, so do keep your questions ready. But over to you, Becca. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today. If you just bear with me 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay. And I hope everyone can see that now. So yes, thank you. And again, thanks for joining today and a warm welcome to this virtual exhibition tour of Senate House Library 150. It's our online exhibition celebrating 150 years of Senate House Library and 150 items. So Senate House Library is, sorry, just wait for the video. We are the central library for 17 colleges and institutions that are part of the University of London. And as Bev said, we're one of the UK's largest academic libraries for arts, humanities and social sciences. We have over 2 million books, over 50 special collections containing primary sources from medieval times to the modern age, and over 1,800 archives containing papers, letters, photos from historic writers and campaigners. With social justice at Sorry, was I on mute?
So just for the last second, so don't worry, just for that last bit again, I don't know what happened there.
So with social justice at the heart of the collections, the items on display capture leading campaigners, historic events, and radical artists alongside well-known literary giants. They capture a diverse range of perspectives that have influenced culture in the UK and beyond over the last 150 years, while highlighting treasures in our special collections dated prior to 1871. Apologies, my video seems to have stopped. There we go. Sorry, there seems to be an error. Sorry, 1 second.
Don't worry, Becca. These things happen.
So as part of the online gallery, if I just go back, hopefully it will work again. Sorry. All worked perfectly before, of course. Here we go. That's what we wanted. So this is the online gallery that you can join online. It captures a range of diverse perspectives, as I've said. There's various items to the exhibition. As you can see, that's the main gallery on the left of 150 items. And on the right, we're compiling Senate House Library staff and user member favourites. We also have a timeline charting the chapters in the Senate House Library story and a number of events that were going on over the next academic year. So if we go into the exhibition itself, And just scrolling down here, you can see that the 150 items are divided into a number of individual galleries, of which there are 9, reflecting the different eras they represent. So you'll be pleased to know I'm not going to do all 150 items in today's session, but just some highlights from each of the galleries. So going on to our founding collections, I'm going to give you a little bit of background to the founding collections and then highlight a couple. So in 1871, the University of London Library, later to be renamed Senate House Library, was established at Berlin Gardens in Worth 1. With its founding collections from Nathaniel Vye, medical practitioner, Augustus de Morgan, mathematician, and George Grote, who was historian and vice-chancellor of the University of London from 1862 to 1871. The founding collections contain over 4,000 titles from 1474 to 1870, including first printed editions of Euclid, Newton, and Copernicus. So moving on to our first item, this is the Margarita Philosophica by Gregor Risch, dated 1504. This is one of the earliest printed encyclopedias from the Renaissance era. Reich was a German monk Rick was a German monk who wanted to encapsulate everything he was taught from his university studies, where he was in Freiburg. Right through from logic to music, it contains some incredible hand-coloured illustrations, as you can see here. The Margarita Philosophica underwent at least 12 editions from its first publication in 1503 through to 1600 and was used widely throughout Europe. Senate House Library has 3 editions of the Margarita Philosophica. Next is the Pantometria by Thomas Degas from 1571. This is a masterpiece of geometry, and we're delighted to have it in our founding collections. It was completed by Degas from a manuscript left by his father, who died when Thomas was only 13 years old. As you can see from this close-up, you can see he sets out his new theorem, of which there are over 100, that would go on to see him being a leading English astronomer for his time. And now on to the Rare and Special Collections Gallery, pre-1871. Here you can see a close-up section of the beautiful manuscript of William Langland Piers Plowman. Senate House Library has one of the earliest surviving copies of this unique illuminated medieval poem of 22 dream visions in which the narrator meets a series of allegorical characters exploring questions around faith. As you can see the full page screen, you can see those amazing designs around the title page there. Next, we have the interesting narrative of the life of Luda Equiano, an incredible first edition, one of the first significant slave autobiographies, charting his life between being captured from Nigeria, taken to the Caribbean, and then on to Europe over the course of 20 years, eventually gaining freedom in London with the help of this publication. It's in 2 volumes, if you can just about see the divide there. You can see this amazing pull-out illustration of what it was like to travel as a slave. And on the left here, the frontispiece shows Equiano there. Moving on, we have an example of one of our miniature books in the library, the Illustrated Bible. This is a fascinating object. As you can see, it's not just fascinating due to its size, but it also includes verses on railway travel, which reflects the industrial innovation and the growing fascination with rail travel for leisure during that time. On to the Transforming the Modern Era Gallery, which is from 1871 to 1899. And there's around 17 items in this gallery. The one you can see on screen at the moment, and it's the main image for the Senate House Library 150, and probably one of my favourite pieces in the whole exhibition. It's just one of around 75 pieces of an ornate hand-painted ceiling. Yes, a ceiling, believe it or not. It was painted by cousins Agnes and Rhoda Garrett, who opened the first interior design company in Britain to be run by women, which was established in their home at 2 Gower Street in Bloomsbury. And this is where the ceiling once was, and we're delighted to have saved that in the archives. And 2 Gower Street was also the family home of their famous suffragist relative, Millicent Garrett Fawcett, of which there's a blue plaque on the building. So do go and see that if you're in the area. Moving on, we have this rare, colourful theatre programme for 13th of September 1897. It's an example of some of the wonderful theatre archives held at Senate House Library. Inside it, you can see the performances, but also adverts for businesses, providing great insight into the culture and locality of London at the time. We also have a number of amazing photographs in the library's collections, and this one here shows Rukhnubai, one of the first female students to be admitted to the University of London, which was the first university to admit women into higher education in 1868. Rukhnubai has an incredible story, which I don't really have time to go into in full here at the moment, but she was a pioneer in medicine and leading campaigner against child marriage, which she herself was a victim of. So do check out her story. Now on to one of our more peculiar items. This is a piece of mulberry tree from Shakespeare's garden. Sir Edwin Durning Lawrence, who donated his collection of over 7,000 items to the library, strongly believed that Sir Francis Bacon was the true author of Shakespeare's plays and built up his collection to substantiate his views. In 1885, he paid a gardener at Shakespeare's property in Stratford-upon-Avon for this piece of timber, which he believed erroneously to be planted by Shakespeare himself. Quite an incredible thing to have in an archive, I think you agree. And so moving on to dawn of a new century, this represents 1900 through to 1913. Here you can see two items that are part of the online gallery and represent the suffragette movement at the turn of the 20th century. The first is a silk buttonhole, and the other is a ribbon roughly about an inch in size that's part of Sophia and Molly de Morgan's archive, both prominent campaigners in the suffragette movement. Sophia was the wife and Molly was the daughter of Augustus de Morgan, who gave the library some of its founding collections, which I referred to just a moment ago. Moving on to the programme for Votes for Women. This is a rare programme, and it was recently purchased by the library as part of a collection of programmes from an Edwardian London theatregoer who had connections in the theatre. It's a great item that supplements the archive of Harley Granville Barker, who was a revolutionary theatre director at the turn of the century and whose archive we hold. Next, we have another miniature item. This is a miniature edition of one of a number of novelty editions of Charles Dickens novels. Shown here is A Christmas Carol. And on to power struggles and cultural identity. This gallery represents 1914 to 1944, so covering both the world wars. And here in this wonderful in this wonderful image, you can see it's a boy giving the anti-fascist salute, and it's one of many photographs we have of the Spanish Civil War collections as part of our Heisler collection, which contains political pamphlets and other materials. And next we have Satire. This is an incredible item and it's incredibly unique. It's the only surviving copy of an anti-conscription and anti-war magazine from November 1917. It should have been seized and burned under the Defence of the Realm Act, but luckily, and at great risk to himself, a former library director secretly stashed this away. It contains some rather powerful drawings, as you can see here. Next, one of our most popular collections, the Harry Price collection. Harry Price was a collector of magic books and was also a paranormal investigator in the 1920s and 30s. This poster, which is an incredible poster, is one of a number of items showing the golden age of magic. Also in the Harry Price collection is another quirky item, part of this gallery, from the Harry Price archives. It's a collection of letters and a sample of hair from an investigation into Geoff the Talking Mongoose. Yes, you heard that right. Harry Price was invited to investigate this phenomenon on the Isle of Man and went to meet James T. Irving, who provided him with these hair samples and who was said to have said talking mongoose. Unsurprisingly, there was no real evidence of the talking mongoose, but Harry Price sent these hair samples to the British Museum for testing, which was said to be dog hair, and probably most likely to be Mr. Irving's sheepdog. The next item gives me chills every time I see it. This is the Nazi Black Book given to library by the Ministry of Information, who used Senate House as its headquarters during the Second World War. It's one of only 3 copies in the world and shows nearly 3,000 names of people in Britain who would have been interrogated if the Nazis had invaded Britain. It features names you'd expect, such as Churchill and Chamberlain, but also artists and writers that publicly opposed the Nazi regime, such as Virginia Woolf, along with some other kind of interesting choices, such as a newspaper cartoonist who was asked about being part of this Nazi list and what he felt about it. And he rather amusingly responded, "It's fine with me because they're on my list too," which I just love. Briefly, going to another example from the Ministry of Information, they designed this V for Victory comic as part of their campaign materials. And that was given to the library also when they left in 1945 and when the library was able to reopen again to its members. The next gallery is Post-War Progress, 1945 to 1959. Here you can see an example of a comic in our magazine and pamphlets collection. It's an incredible design and really encapsulates the post-war era. New Worlds, a fiction of the future from 1946, contains short stories reflecting the increasing popularity of science fiction in the post-war era, especially when a new future was on everyone's minds. The next item is from our Exile archives and is one of a number of pastel sketches and watercolors by Margaret Berger Hammerschlag. She was an Austrian artist in exile during the Second World War, and she brilliantly captures the Le Ballet Nègre, a French black ballet company, given its first UK performance in London in 1946. Next, the Modern Radicals Gallery, 1960 to 1979, and this wonderful comic here. It's part of our Commonwealth collections. It was designed for Zambian youth in the 1970s, and the combination of science and bold artwork made it very popular. It's particularly fascinating when you consider it in context. At the time, the director for the National Academy for Science, Space Research and Philosophy claimed that Zambia's independence from Britain in 1965 is what interfered with the Zambian space program and therefore why they were unable to beat the US and Soviet Union to the moon. An interesting perspective, I think you'll agree. Next is an example of the psychology IQ tests held at Senate House Library. This test, the only version now available in the UK, was used in the 70s to evaluate primary school children in the UK to decide whether they were, quote, subnormal. It was highly controversial in that it discriminated against Black and ethnic minority students. It was the topic of a recent documentary by Oscar-winning director Steve McQueen called Subnormal, and that's still available on BBC iPlayer if you want to check it out and find out more about that interesting story. And next we have this rather wonderful image. This photo is one of over 500,000 items in the Kusichaka archive. This is Dr. Anne Kendall, OBE, the pioneering archaeologist who went to UCL. She spent almost 40 years reinvigorating the Incan infrastructure of the Kusichaka region surrounding Machu Picchu in Peru, working with the local community. You can see her on this rope bridge, Indiana Jones style, and it's even more fascinating when you see this image and realize that actually that's not a backpack she's wearing, that is her two-year-old baby she's carrying across that rope bridge. So you can imagine what an amazing woman she was and how much she achieved from that. Next is our New Worlds and Technology Gallery from 1980 to 1999. Here you can see another one of thousands of amazing photographs held at the library. And this shows the Greenham Common protesters there, and this particular protest held in 1983, where over 70,000 protesters formed a 14-mile chain around the RAF base to campaign against nuclear testing. This next item is from the Terry Pratchett archive. It shows previously unseen artwork for the video game version of Pratchett's Discworld fantasy novels. It's a great example of reflect the growth of literature and fiction being adapted for TV and media. And in our final gallery, A New Era Power of Perspective, which runs from 2000 until the present day, we have this rather wonderful object. This is called a cartonera, and it's one of hundreds we have in the library's collections. And the cartoneras emerged in South America as part of a community publishing initiative that began at the beginning of the 21st century, and it spread globally from then on. They are named after waste pickers who collect discarded cardboard, cartonera, that is used to make books to distribute to poor communities. And that's just a selection of some of the highlights in the 150 items we have at Senate House Library. So please do go onto the website and discover more. Thank you very much for watching this private tour for the Knowledge Quarter, and I'll now hand over to Bev.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thank you so much, Becca. If you could just stop sharing your slide, if that's possible, then we can go into the Q&A. Brilliant. Now we've got loads of questions that have come from the audience, so I'm going to just start with those first, and I've got a whole bunch of my own questions. So first of all, we've got a question that's asking, do these older, rarer works need to be kept in special conditions, and are they available for public viewing or only at special exhibitions such as this? And that's from Sander.
Yes, so you can view special collections on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Senate House Library if you're a member, but we are looking at opening access to the public. But you can access all our archives for free if you have an appointment. So it's just really getting in touch with customer services to do that. You can have a day membership, which is just costs £5, that you can use the library for reference only. So very much open to the public. Fantastic.
Now I know you've got sort of roughly 2 million books in your in the archives, 50 special collections, 1,800 archival collections. This is all from your website that I'm reading. But what was the process of curating 150 objects out of all of these?
Well, it's a tricky thing to do because there are so many wonderful items in the collection. The process was very much looking at the diverse range of voices that the library has, and that unique perspective it has of social justice. So that was very much the thread that ran through the exhibition curation. And the reason why I divided it into 9 galleries is to get that good spread across, because you know, we have wonderful treasures, and included in the gallery is some of Shakespeare's first printed folios from 1623. And so we have all these amazing treasures, but there's lots in the archives that we want to pull out and give more resonance to show that diversity of voice. You know, we've got the Orbit magazine, and we want that to sit alongside all the other important photographs, rare books, special collections. So it's about having that diversity of voice, and putting it into those categories really help to spread that diversity across the whole exhibition.
Yeah. How did you even begin to sort of narrow down, make a short list? What was the process? And also, if I can add, part 2 of this question is sort of, how did you do this during lockdown?
Yes, so we built on previous exhibitions that we've done with Senate House Library. So looking at those items, working with the librarians and archivists at Senate House Library to make suggestions and shortlist material. There's a number of items, but again, we wanted to make sure all of our collections are represented. So there were so many, but you have to draw the line somewhere, and that's always a tricky thing to do. But you have to decide what's representative, what's interesting. This is trying to open it up to the public. What tells the story in a good way? What shows the person behind the collection? So, for example, with Durning Lawrence, you know, he got those first editions of Shakespeare, but he was also quite a character. I think you can tell through that piece of timber. So it's making decisions about the items to reflect not only the collections, but to give an idea in the sense of the range of material we have. So it's not just books, it's timber and ceilings. It's also various amounts of objects that give their own story and version of events to all these various historical moments in our history.
Yeah, fantastic. Badra has asked a question. Do you have any documents or any items in the collection from British East Africa? It's quite a specific question, but do you know if there's anything?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of an exact example in there, but we have the Commonwealth collections, which are vast, and we have a load of great material in there, but we have material representing countries across the globe. So it's worth going on the catalogue on our homepage and having a good search of all those items there. You know, you've got a selection of things from across different countries, such as the Castaneiras, such as Orbit from Zambia. So there's such a range of items that you can go and explore for yourself on the catalogue.
Yeah, yeah. Becca, tell us a bit more about the people who gave their collections to the library, some of the names you've mentioned there. What were their motivations to do so, especially as it was a brand new library? So what inspired them to sort of hand over? Or was there a financial agreement? What was it like 150 years ago?
Well, the University of London, you know, was built on the principle that it was going to be a central university for the city of the UK. And it welcomed people from across the board, and particularly from creating social mobility. As I mentioned, it was the first university to admit women into higher education. And it was very much that philosophy that was really developed through the library. And I think that inspired a lot of collectors to give it to the library. And also there's a number of collectors that do naturally have connections through teaching at the school, for example, and one of the number of colleges that part of the University of London. So there's a mixture of collectors, but it's very much that ethos, I think, of that kind of social mobility and social justice that really attracts people to Senate House Library.
And do you still receive collections from people who've been keeping, not the word hoarding, but who've been keeping many things, collecting many things, archiving things, and they decide that they want to hand it over? How does that work now in 2021?
Well, it's a good question. And obviously with the coronavirus, that's obviously thrown a spanner of the works, but I don't think we're the only people in the Knowledge Quarter that is experiencing this at the moment. Indeed, it's quite a, you know, it's not an easy kind of process because, you know, there's all considerations around space. How big is the collection? Can we house it? We've got the tower that runs from the 8th floor to the 6th to the 19th floor, which holds a lot of our books, as well as sites off at Egham. So it's questions around that material and whether it fits with the library. For example, at the beginning of last year, we took receipt of a collection relating to LGBTQ history, which ranges from the 18th century right up to the present day. So we're constantly getting collections, and we're building, and we build on that unique perspective of social justice. So we look at various items that we incorporate and keep building.
Fantastic. Now, you've done a great job of putting it all online. That's absolutely fantastic. I think so many other museums and galleries could, you know, learn how to put these things up online. But there is a physical exhibition as well. Is that right? There's
not. No.
There's not.
No physical exhibitions. Again, due to coronavirus, I'm afraid on-site exhibitions have been postponed for the time being. But we are looking to reinstate them in 2022. When exactly is another question, but obviously I'm working on that at the moment.
Yeah, and would it be, what is the next exhibition going to be something different, or would you take this collection and maybe do a physical version of that? Judy is asking in the chat about whether this collection is open to the public.
So in terms of the physical exhibition, that's still very much a question. The online exhibition is going to run until June next year. So it's a full year from when the first founding collections arrived in the library. So whether we can do a display of some kind in the first part of next year, that we'll have to see, unfortunately. But it's all dependent on access and another number of issues, obviously. So it's still very much a question mark. In terms of next exhibitions, well, there's so many items, things, but theatre is definitely one that we are looking into and researching, and certainly started researching before the pandemic. So we hope that will be one of the first ones to open on site as well as online.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's all I had to ask. I've had lots of questions from the audience, but I wanted to keep this event very short. mainly because the weather outside is so glorious, and I'm sure many of you want to go and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you so much for coming. First of all, I must apologize for those who had a bit of problem getting in. We had a bit of a link issue, and so you were directed to another previous event, but I think we managed to fix it, and those who wanted to come have all managed to attend. We weren't expecting 46 people to be in this event today given the weather, but thank you all for making the effort, and apologies for the technical problems at the start, but I think we've managed to fix it. Before you go, please do leave your feedback. Let us know what you thought of the event, the exhibition. That's always valuable to the KQ, but also to Senate House. I'm also going to just tell you a bit about a couple of our events coming up. So we have, where's my next slide? We have another private view coming up at the end of the month. And this is the Welcome Collection, Joy and Tranquility. So actually they've got two exhibitions. One is called Joy and one's called Tranquility. And we are doing a virtual private view of both of them together. So that's quite a special treat. That's on Thursday, the 30th of the month, between 2 and 3. And then next month, we have our first in-person private view post-pandemic, which we're absolutely thrilled to present. And it's called Outwitting Cancer at the Francis Crick Institute. And this is going to be an after work event. So there might be some wine, there might be some nibbles. We don't know yet, but hopefully there'll be something there for everyone to come and enjoy and meet each other and network and just be in a physical space together again. And this will be at the Francis Crick on Wednesday, the 6th of October between 5 and 7. Thank you all so much for coming. Do leave your feedback, and we'll just say goodbye and see you in a few weeks' time. Thank you so much.